My name is Dr. Charles of the Department of Marine Sciences, University of Lagos. Welcome to our series on pollution and coastal waters of Nigeria. Today we want to look at the plankton, the benthos, and the fishes of coastal waters of Nigeria. Plankton, benthos, fishes. These are important components of the aquatic ecosystem. They are essential parts of the biota, the biological forms that exist within the ecosystem. The plankton are drifters, from the Latin word planktos, meaning drifters. They move at the mercy of the water currents, the dominant water currents. They are usually plants or animals, and they are usually microscopic. Plankton are the base of the aquatic food chain. They are the first step and the second step. The plankton can be divided into two. The phytoplankton, those are autotrophic, they can make their own food by photosynthesis or chemosynthesis by absorbing light energy to produce their own food, or chemosynthesis from the energy from chemicals within waters to create food. The zooplankton are animals. Though microscopic, they feed on the phytoplankton. Together, the phytoplankton and zooplankton make up the plankton. They usually move, like I said earlier, with the dominant water current, the tides, the flow of the waters as they go. The next set are the benthos. These are organisms, usually plant and animals, associated to the aquatic environment substratum, associated to the sea bottom, lagoonal bottom, rivers, creeks, the bottom of the aquatic ecosystem. They can live on it, above it, or within it. They can be infauna or epifauna. They can be shelled forms like gastropods, they could be annelids, they could be crustaceans, etc., etc. They are also very important in the food web and the ecological pyramids of aquatic ecosystem, just like the plankton. The fishes are cold-blooded animals that live in water, usually vertebrates. They are very important and they are higher up on the food chain. So after the plankton, we also have the benthos, we also have the fishes. The plankton are drifters. The benthos are usually sessile or sedentary, either fixed or slow moving at the bottom of the waters, while the fishes are usually nectans. They move in any direction they would want. They have the volition of movement, unlike the plankton. Ecologically, they are all very important. Studies over the years have shown that the seasonality of our coastal waters show these organisms to be more productive in the dry season than in the wet season. In the wet season, in our coastal environment, nutrients come into our waters. Freshwater discharges connected to the distributive pattern of rainfall distribution brings waters as rain, then flood waters as they come with the rivers and creeks and estuaries into our lagoons and our inshore and offshore waters, laden with nutrients. And for the coastal waters, at high tide, tidal seawater incursion comes in twice a day and goes out twice a day. That is tidal inflow and tidal outflow. These conditions are very important. Examples of plankton in our waters include diatoms, dinoflagellates. We have the blue-green algae, etc., etc. It's important to note that some of these species are Cosynodiscus, Alucosaera, Bidolphia. We have species, those are species of diatoms. We have species of blue-green algae like our Microcystis, our Merismapedia, our Oscillatoria, our Trichodesmium. We are looking at from freshwater organisms all the way to brackish to seawater forms. For the dinoflagellates, we have examples like Serratium, Dinophysi, Noctiluca, Peridinium, etc., etc. These are for the phytoplankton. For the zooplankton, we have species like Acacia, Paracalanus pavus. Acacia clausi is our most dominant. We have things like Temora species. We have Oitona. We have Oikoplura, etc., etc. Example. But for the benthic organisms, which are usually economically important because they add up to the values that and food base that we have in our markets, we have species that are shelled like what we call the isam, or what we call the periwinkles, like the Tympanotonus fuscatus varadula, found in the mangrove extremes. We also have our aloides, our pachymelina, our mud skipper like the Perophthalmus, the hermit crab like the Clibonarius. We have the fishes, which are usually divided into two, the fin fishes and the shell fishes. The fin fishes could include tilapia or Sareterodon, Hemidiscus. We also have species of mugil. We have species of Pumadasi jubelini, mugil cephalus, species like the Scumba scumbrus and Sardinella aurita, moving from the inland waters all the way to our more outside the bar and coastal waters. We have our obokun, the catfish, our Christistis nigrojigitatus, Clerite gyripinus, among others, Cynodontis clarias, among others. But for the shellfishes, we have our crabs, we have our lobsters, our prawns, our shrimps, our squids. For our shrimps, we have our Peneus lucialis, the pink shrimp. We have our freshwater prawns like Macrobranchium vonelevei. We also have species like Parapiniopsis, etc., etc. We have crabs, the common lagoon crab like our Calenictis amnicola. We have our Portunate crabs, the ghost crabs, Usipoda, etc., etc. It's important to note that in the coastal waters of Nigeria, apart from the freshwater ecosystems that have the rivers, the creeks, the lagoons, the estuaries, the offshore waters or the neretic waters over the continental shelf, and the offshore waters, these areas control the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the benthos, and the fishes that we have in these environments. With regard to the shoreline of these areas, we have species like our mud skippers, our hermit crabs, our mangroves like our red mangrove and our white mangrove and our black mangrove, Rhizophora racemosa, Avicennia nitida, and Langocularia species. Some of these are the dominant mangroves we have, with the red mangrove being more dominant than all others from our border and our extra-rhine entries from our border with the Republic of Benin all the way to the Strand Coast after the Niger Delta. The Lagos arm of our coastal waters is about 200 kilometers. Then the Transgressive Mud Coast about 75 kilometers. The Niger Delta coast about 500 kilometers with over 26 estuaries. And then the Strand Coast ending around Bakassi Peninsula, 85 kilometers. This is the geomorphological division of our coastline. Pollution in these waters are from domestic and industrial waste. They come in through the rivers and the creeks, usually when indiscriminate dumping of waste are not properly regulated and monitored, allow them to flow into our waters, usually by rainfall, floodwaters, pushing them in, or waste streams connected to the recipient water bodies. It's important to note that the factors that affect the existence of these organisms include the water chemistry, changing water chemistry types, and then the benthic sediment. The substrate type determines the kinds of organisms you also find in this region. As we go on in our series on pollution and coastal waters of Nigeria, we'll be looking at the pollution types and areas, hotspots, and their implication on our coastal waters and its biological diversity. But it's important to note that the more pollutants, the more contaminants, the more human-induced stresses that come into our coastal waters, the less the species that will be able to survive. These impact species diversity by reducing it. The abundance of fish reduces, the abundance of benthos reduces, the abundance of the plankton reduces, their numbers reduce, and whatever roles they play in the ecosystem is also affected in the reduction of species or abundance. Some of these species are economically important, and we find them on our tables because we eat them, like the oysters, or the shrimps, or the periwinkles, or the fishes, or the crabs, or the shrimps. The more pollutants get into our water, we have reduced diversity, lowered species composition, as you would have it, and it affects their distribution, because areas that are more polluted have lower number of species. In our next episode on pollution and coastal waters of Nigeria, we'll be looking at pollution in this region and seeing how it impacts on the ecology and economics of species. I would like you to subscribe to our channel. Subscribe after you have watched so that we can, and comment so that we can hear your comments also. Till we meet again in our next series. My name is Dr. Charles Onyema from the Department of Marine Sciences, University of Lagos, Nigeria. See you again next time. Thank you very much.